Hello, hello, dear listeners. Let's do this. Okay, here's what we're after today. As we talk about mental loads, getting relief, we are going to do the following. We're going to start off by setting some context, specifically around what are some of the new routines, some of the new things that we've been taking on. What, as I look across a broader landscape among my clients, what are some of those trends that I'm seeing? So I want to talk through that. There's a reason that I am bringing up mental loads. Sneak peek, we're carrying more, and things are yet again dynamic and changing. And so, how are we responding? Then I want to make two moves, and they're like the partner questions that for me can change everything. What and then how? What and then how? What are the things that you are carrying? What are those mental loads? So I'm going to share some questions and prompts to get you thinking about that. And then how do you get relief? What, then how? We can make this mistake where we feel the weight of what we're carrying. And then we go to, instead of getting curious about what's happening here, let me make some distinctions. Let me see some things I might not be noticing, bring new awareness to it. We feel a pain point and we want to jump into action. And when we do that, it can make us feel like, hey, I'm being productive. However, it can also lead to getting on that hamster wheel, being in a spin cycle. Like I'm acting, I'm taking action, I'm doing, but to what end? And that's why first it's about what are those mental loads that you're carrying, and then how can you get some relief? So I promise I want us to get there too. So we'll look at some ideas there that my hope is it'll give you a little bit of a cheat sheet as you're thinking about the mental loads that you are carrying, and also will prompt you to come to your own truth on what's going to work for you. So those are our moves, a little bit of context setting. What are the things that you're carrying? And then how do you get relief? Before I go there, I just have to say, here as I'm recording episode 4 of the Design Yourself podcast is back, a really giant thank you. I have heard from an astonishing number of people, um, people I didn't know, people who are clients I haven't heard from in a long time, old acquaintances, existing clients, and it is so heartening. And I just wanted to say that if you are finding there is something moving you, it's prompting an idea, you want to share an insight, you have a curiosity and want to ask a question, reach out to me through pointroadstudios.com. Find me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. I read every one of those messages. And so I wanted to share just a few quick ones that have come in just to celebrate, which is again, that's one of the ways that we can get relief is taking moments to celebrate. So let me see if I can model that in my own authenticity. So I heard pretty quickly after the first episode came out from a longtime collaborator of mine who wrote to me and said, "Loved your new episode, landed perfectly for me, helped shift my thinking, very impactful. Thank you. You have such a gift." The second message came into me from the website. Let's see if I can pull that up here for us. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. So the last one I shared is someone I'm in regular communication with, a longtime ongoing collaborator, amazing person. She is such a gift. This one came in from someone I have not talked to in probably 7 years, years. Many years have gone by. Such that when she first reached out, she's like, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "Of course I remember you." And I'll give you some of the highlights of what she shared. She was talking about one of the times when we had last met. This was 3D in real life. And she said, at that point, I was having trouble finding my way, navigating work life. And we went on a walk together. And that conversation really helped me think about myself in relation to work. Now I'm in another work transition and just listened to your latest podcast episode. I loved it. I really felt what you were talking about and keep thinking about the episode. I look forward to more. This is why I do this, because I love getting to have the chance. I mean, I truly adore one-on-one in the small team settings that I am doing my day-to-day work. And I know that there is a readiness needed to come into coaching. And I also know that sometimes you're not in a moment where you're ready to invest in coaching, or you're doing it, but you just are in a place where you want to be a sponge and soak in ideas. And my wish with this podcast is it makes the ideas that are being shared in team coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching more accessible. So when I get a message like that, in addition to just, the literary person in me who loves a bookend where I'm like, remember that last conversation? And now it's another kind of conversation we're having that's similar. It's really special and meaningful. Okay, one last one. Nothing for me to read, but this was probably my most personally shocking and lovely bit of feedback was while sitting along the soccer sidelines this past weekend. A fellow mom out there watching her child, just like me, play soccer on a beautiful, gorgeous fall day in upstate New York. We were just catching up, and I had not seen her since last soccer season back in the spring. And she's someone I've always really enjoyed getting to know. And her youngest child is often on the sidelines with her, and he is like, I mean, just an old soul, an absolute delight. Like, I genuinely am like, can't wait to hang out with that child again. So, anyway, while sitting along the sidelines with her, she was like, "Oh, and by the way, I listened to your podcast." And she went on to talk about an episode and how it was prompting her thinking. And I just thought, she's like, "I didn't know you had a podcast." And I was like, wow, I have to say, even though I hit publish and I share these things out in the world, I never know where they will trickle down and get to. And so it was really cool because so much of my work happens outside of the community that I live in, to see someone in my community accessing it. Okay. So thank you for all your lovely, kind words. If you're feeling inspired, you can leave a podcast review. That helps to get it out to more people. But mostly, I just wanted to say that I appreciate it. I am filled with gratitude, and you all are awesome. Okay, as promised, let's talk about the context we're in. So here's the headline. Whether you have gone to a return to work in your office setting, or there's been more clarity on what's happening with hybrid, or you are, and those are all things I'm seeing people navigate in the workplace. And there's return to work, and then you show up and very few people are there. And so how do we how do we build culture now that we're back in the workplace that way? So all these questions around how and where we're working, there's more stakes in the ground than there were even a year ago, certainly 18 months ago, when we were in a moment of like, when are we going to find out, and what's next, and what's next, and what's next? We're starting to see the places that we work and the places that we collaborate with put those stakes in the ground. We are also seeing other systems do the same thing. So I have school age children. I see how schools are starting to set new routines. Whereas I once, I'd gotten used to doing parent teacher conferences over a Google Meet. Now sometimes it's happening in person. Back to school night was in person this year. And it was lovely and fun to be in the two different school buildings where my children attend school. On the flip side, it's different. It's a new kind of routine. Oh, I have to go there in person. At the same time, I'm traveling more for work. So now that's a place where a new routine that I'm tapping into is really, how am I reinventing the routine from what once was? I think of a woman who was in a group facilitation that I was leading noting that, she was speaking at an event, and a year ago, that would have meant preparing for the event and then clicking a link and logging in. This time it meant preparing for the speaking event and then getting on a flight from the East Coast to the West Coast and doing, in her case, a day trip, the packing, the what does it mean to not just present over Zoom, but present in this other setting, right? All of those are new mental loads, like all these things that we're carrying. And that's just in the doing of life and work. Then you think about our consciousness. What are we aware of now that we weren't aware of before? And there's some really beautiful things that we've been waking up to. The way that we're thinking about race in this country, new awareness happening, important, must have. The way we're thinking about gender, the way that we're seeing ourselves in relationship to other people. I really see new, deeper awareness happening as a collective, as a race of human beings. And yet we're also still processing and getting the wisdom of how do we make meaning of that? How do we change the systems that we're a part of? How do I move with what I see now that I didn't see before? That's a whole nother set of mental loads that we're carrying. And so the headline here is everyone's context will be different, but that we are starting to see more stakes coming into the ground. And if there was one thing that I think is most amplified out of everything, is that our constant these last few strange pandemic years has been change. And that's not a new constant. Change is always the constant, but we've been collectively experiencing this change, and that's different because so many of us I think on a good day in the flow of the change, and on a rough day have the waves of change crashing upon us. So the constant is change. And when things are changing, it means we're reorganizing what we see, what we know, what we understand, and that's the mental loads. Those are things that we're carrying. So I want to get into some of that reflection on what. And so the first question I want you to think of, and again, I know you may be driving, you may be walking on a run, picking up, doing laundry, whatever. You can get these questions over in the show notes at pointroadstudios.com. For now, let it wash over you. What are the mental loads you carry? And if you have roommates or you have family members you live with, you have work colleagues that you partner with, this is a good question to answer in community. What are the mental loads that we carry? What are the mental loads that I carry? It gets back into, as I was saying, like right now for me, I'm carrying more travel. And I realized on some recent work trips, I was like, I've gotten really bad at this. And also the airports are operating differently. I'm carrying a mental load of less trust when I go to catch a flight. And I now live in a more remote location, and my local airport doesn't have the same direct flights it used to. So I'm always like, well, do I fly out of my local airport? Do I go into New York City or surrounding airports? Like it's a question every time I travel. So that's a mental load that I'm carrying. Think in your context. What are the mental loads that I carry? And if you do this in community, also still ask yourself, what do we each carry? But then also, what are the mental loads that we carry? And then I want you to think about, how is that different from what your work and your life looked like in 2019? How is that different? Like for myself, I go back to 2019, and that was a particular moment in my life where there was a lot happening. That's the year we were really full throttle building our home. And it was such a gift and privilege to be able to do that, and one that we created for ourselves. And I really enjoyed most every second of it. I think I enjoyed the wild ride of renovation and building more than most people. um, and at the same time, uh, it was really intensive. And my children were just that much younger. And so, parenting, I want to say directionally like a 4, 6, and 8-year old, um, that that was a more intensive parenting than where I am today. And I also think about where my business was and the kind of the clients I was working with, just everything. And I was only a year in 2019. Well, depending on the part of the year, uh, that's where I hit my 1-year anniversary of leaving Washington D.C. and moving to upstate New York in the Catskills. And that was so there was like a lot I was processing. So I go back to 2019, and there was a lot of what was different is that not so much that I from today actually feel like I'm better equipped to handle some of the changing mental loads than I was then. That was a real gift to me of the wild chaos of 2020 in particular, but also 2021. Um, but I was still carrying a lot of mental loads, but they were more personal, more individual. There were less, I didn't know other people going through the same things I was going through. So it felt more like a more isolated experience than what things feel like to me now, where I'm like, oh, you're experiencing that? Me too. It's not better or worse what it felt like in 2019 versus today, but just that's what I notice. So then the question for you is, what do you notice? How are the mental loads? How is what you're carrying the same? How is it different? Again, if you're talking about it with a partner, colleagues, your team, how is what we carried then the same? How is it different? And then you might cut it from a different lens. So we've talked about today, 2019, go 10 years earlier. What about 2009? What did it look like then? You might, because maybe you're talking about it with your team, maybe you want to go to like a different milestone or major event. We launched this new product or got this game changing donation, whatever it is. Like you might go to a different moment in time where there was a milestone that really shook things up. You might just say, well, let's go 10 years back. What do we notice then? So just pick that a milestone time, or borrow my 2009 suggestion and like take it from a different lens. Gain the perspective that comes when we look further back. And then I want you to cascade out into the future. And again, you might pick a milestone moment to do this. Great, you may do that. You might also bring it forward and say, you might also say, okay, I don't know what a milestone is, and just like say 10 years. So, all right, I did go out to 2032. Or maybe because we cut back to 2019, cut ahead to 2029. The point is like push yourself to imagine into a future date that feels unknowable, and ask yourself, what's your wish for what the mental loads will be then? We will still have them. I think that's part of the human condition, is we're carrying things with us. But also, what will you be better equipped to do as a result of where you are today, the path you will travel in the years ahead? Most important thing I want you to cozy up to is that very first question. What are the mental loads I'm carrying right now? These other questions, as you think about how's that different from 2019, maybe 2009, what's my wish for the future? That's perspective taking. It's just helping you build perspective around your answer to the core question here, which is, what are the mental loads that you carry? All right, let's talk about getting relief, shall we? Okay, so I'm going to give you just a few tools. Any one of these tools could be its own podcast. The idea is just to prompt you, to remind you, you can get relief, but you haven't gone from, oh, I'm overwhelmed. There's all these things I'm doing. Let me take action. Like you're taking perspective first. Bravo, you've done it. I'm certain even just by listening to the questions we've already done, you're taking perspective. You want to sit down and journal with them. You want to have a cup of coffee with a friend and talk about it. You want to go on a walk and listen to it again. Great. All other ways that you can get perspective. Trust your instinct. Follow your intuition. And then you want to make sure that you don't sit in a place where you're now stewing, living in the mental loads. Like shake it off and think about, okay, how do I get relief? So here's a couple of tools I want you to think about first. The first tool is really a perspective to take around what you've just done, which is to cozy up to what is real and true. So if as you are categorizing and capturing your mental loads, you find yourself being like, well, let me not pay attention to that one. That one's not worth writing down. Well, I don't want to speak that one out loud. To get relief, you have to cozy up to what is real and true. And when in doubt, stick with neutral, observable facts. It's not the judgment that nobody likes me. That's my mental load. Nobody likes me. That is your assessment of something. So you have to go underneath of it and say, well, what's leading me to assume that nobody likes me? And it might be something like, let me think. If nobody likes me, it might be when I text these three people, when I sent a text to these three people yesterday, no one responded, which makes me think maybe they don't like me. Or maybe it's which makes me certain that they don't like me. But like break apart the assessment and the neutral observable fact. That's what I want you like cozy up to what is real and true, including in that instance. Well, what is real and true is I sent 3 text messages, one same text to 3 people, maybe in the same chain, maybe a different chain, right? That's like we could go back and verify that. And what's also true is it makes me believe that they don't like me. Now we're at least saying like what's my neutral observable fact is this thing makes me feel this way. Great. That's better than just people don't like me, which is a belief that we are stating as if it's a fact. Okay, so cozy up to what is real and true right now. Second play that you can make. Honor the emotions that show up. So as you are looking at the mental loads that you carry, um, like I've been talking about travel. For me, I noticed that one of the emotions that showed up was kind of embarrassment. I was embarrassed I'm like, why can I not pack for like the series of trips that I'm taking without it taking an enormous amount of time? Like I feel embarrassed. At the same time, I can logically think, well, I haven't done it the same amount of times, neutral observable fact. Like I'm traveling more now than I have in the past. My old suitcase I used to travel with has broken and I hadn't replaced it. Right? I can think logically about various things. I live now in the woods and the things that I'm wearing and are in my closet aren't the same things that I tend to travel when I go into an urban location. Okay, how do I process that? I can hold empathy for myself on that. And also acknowledge and honor, I'm feeling embarrassed. So I'm not trying to rush through it. I'm not. And for me, whenever I honor the emotion, especially if it's an emotion that I assess as one that I doesn't serve me, like keeping embarrassment around, there can be a positive use. But holding on to it, living from that emotion, that doesn't feel authentic and real. I'm not in integrity if embarrassment is a core emotion that's showing up on an ongoing basis. But if I honor it, then it's almost like it gets lighter. Instead of it being a weight around my neck, it's an emotion like on a balloon that I can hold and then let go and let it float off. Bye. Honor the emotion or emotions that show up. Third play in your playbook. Ask for help. So if you are noticing that I'm overwhelmed because this is something new that I'm taking on, I think of a client uh, who I worked with in the past during the height of the pandemic, and incredible person with an incredible mission, leading a really big team. And we have resumed our work now because she's asking for help on how do I get better at managing meetings in this hybrid work environment. And we're looking at the dynamics of what's happening in the team. So this is a person who said, you know what? I've taken things as far as I can take on my own, and I want to ask for some help. And Sharon's been part of my help, so I'm going to ask for Sharon's help because I know how we can take perspective and get some tools and work on this together. You can ask for help from a colleague, from a friend, from the internet, from a book, from a podcast, right? All different kinds of ways we can ask for help. But if you see that there is something you need, ask for it. Use your voice. Remember, people are not mind readers, so ask for help. And then finally, the last thing I want to say here is get still. Now, I did the recent episode on finding center, like really all these different ways that you can center. And stillness is one of those. So when you are moving so fast, or simply things around you are moving so fast, find ways to get still. Find those ways to get still. So those are the 4 plays that I want to leave you with. Cozy up to what is real and true. Honor the emotion or emotions that show up. Ask for help and get still. Okay, so that, beautiful listeners, is what I wanted to share with you today. And as we close out today's episode, please know that it is my deep, 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 deep wish that what you heard today is going to support you in tackling the transformation that you seek, whether as you lead a team, you're sparking change inside of your organization, you are looking to redirect your own path through your mindsets, through your habits, through your own way of being. So may that transformation that you seek come your way. And as I said at the top, I want to hear from you. So you have something that's sparking, you're looking for some help, you want to just celebrate. Please reach out to me. Know that I will listen to every comment. I will take in every every inquiry that comes through the website over at pointroadstudios.com. So I would love, 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 love to hear from you. And I look forward to that. And until next time, please remember that I will be cheering for you and holding my own deeply held belief that there is nothing stopping you. So go on ahead and get after whatever it is that you really want.